Welcome to this module on connectors and actionable messages. My name is Paul Schaeflein. I'm a Microsoft MVP for Office Development. In the Card Design and Incoming Webhooks section, we will discuss the design guidelines for building a card. We will discuss the sections and fields that you can add to your card. We will cover the security and storage requirements for webhooks, and we'll conclude with a demo. Office 365 is a platform for delivering information to users. Connectors and actionable messages are part of the conversations canvas. And that means when you send information to Office 365 through a connector, it shows up in a conversation in a team or a group. Connector cards are the primary way in which we send information to Office 365 conversations through a connector. Connector cards can contain rich content. We can use text enhanced using Markdown. We can send images, and we can further include information in sections and fields. These cards are supported across Office 365 workloads: Outlook, Groups, Microsoft Teams, and Yammer. Let's discuss the design guidelines for cards, starting with text. Text can be formatted using basic Markdown. Italics, bold, strike-through, links, headings, and bulleted lists are all available to be in our text section of our cards. Any HTML that you send will be ignored and treated as plain text. You can add images to a card as appropriate. You choose the layout that best conveys the meaning that you're trying to present. We can use an images field as many times as necessary to create a photo gallery. A photo gallery is rendered inside a section, and that rendering will depend on the device or the application displaying the card. You may have to scroll or swipe to review multiple images. A hero image is intended to be the centerpiece of a card. If we have a news article or a product information card, can put an image to focus information on that. You can also use a hero image as a banner to span across the entire width of the reading content. Again, that is the centerpiece of your card, and you want to draw attention to that. There is also an activity image field, which renders very similar to what you would see in email clients. This activity image field shows in a little 2-column layout that has the image as well as some text about it. You would typically use this to have indicate a user profile image, or maybe perhaps a logo to disguise a news article abstract. Cards can have sections, and you would use sections to logically group data together. In the image that's shown, you'll see there is a digest format of information in which 2 sections are used to provide information about 2 different notices. We don't want to use too many of these. The suggestion from Microsoft is to use 10 or less. And if necessary, you can include a link at the bottom in a section of its own that says view more details or view full information. The key thing to remember when we're providing data for a card is that we're going to specify content over the Chrome. There are fields specifically set up to contain information on the cards. The card itself has a title and a summary and some text. You can define a theme color, which provides some hinting overall about the way the card will look, and you can list potential actions at the bottom of a card. In addition, a card can contain sections, and within each section, you have fields for information there. The title, the text, activity text as we saw before, an image gallery or a hero image, a collection of facts, and actions that apply to the information in that specific section. Combining these all together lets us have some incredible flexibility for how we want to show information. So in the sample you see here, we have a title for the card, a section about activity, some facts listed here, which is just a little table that shows information about specific information, as well as some text and actions down at the bottom. Again, these sections are optional. The individual pieces within the sections are also optional, so you can mix and match all of these to provide the information that you feel relevant. There are security requirements that we must be aware of as part of Office 365 connectors. The first, all pages must use HTTPS. The landing and configuration pages capture data, and that certainly should be secured. Furthermore, the registration callback will not happen if the callback URL that you provide does not have HTTPS scheme. In addition, that registration callback page is called with the webhook URL as a query parameter. Typically, your callback page would have links to your documentation or to your company website, and if users click on those, the callback page with its query string parameters would be included as a referring page to other pages. This disclosure really should not happen. The only party that should understand the webhook URL is your application that will be making the callbacks. So the best way to get around this is that once you store your data, you should then redirect the browser using a HTTP 302 redirect. Furthermore, you can configure your callback page with an HTTP meta tag that instructs the browser to do not send referrer information. These steps will help make sure that your webhook URL is not disclosed to anyone other than yourself. In this demo, we're going to explore Office 365 connector cards and submit them to groups using an incoming webhook. I'm starting in Outlook on the web. First, we're going to create a new group. While we can send cards to personal inboxes, that is covered in a separate module. But specify the group, and for the moment I'm going to make this a private group. Although it works both fine in public and private groups, I'm going to choose private so that I can connect this group to Microsoft Teams. I don't need any other members at the moment, so we will then let the provisioning happen to create my connector card group. In the upper right is a gear. When I click the gear, I get choices for editing the group as well as for connectors. When you choose this connectors link, you get a list of all the connectors registered with Microsoft as part of the connector portal. One of the ones that we're working with at the moment will just be incoming webhook. I will click add to say I want to add an instance of the incoming webhook connector to this Outlook group. I need a name for it because I can connect multiple instances. Each instance must have its own name. I will leave the image as is and click create, and it returns to me a URL. I'm going to copy this to the clipboard because we'll need that later. When I click done, I am returned to the connectors for my group, right? And then you'll notice on the left-hand side there's an option to manage my configured connectors. I have one instance of this configured and it's shown here. Using this manage link, I can add, remove, get the URL again if necessary. So now that I have my connector connected to the group, I can now send information to this. To get started with cards, you can go to the Message Card Playground. This is a website created by Microsoft that will let me review various different types of cards and create and preview them. Right? So I've chosen the Twitter Digest card, and you'll notice here that I have a card with multiple sections. Right? So in my sections group here, you can see there's one here, and there's a second one here, right? The third one, and these kind of correlate to the three sections you can see with the dividing line. So as I look in through each section, you'll notice I have information, right? So I have activity information here. This particular one has a URL that doesn't render the image, but you'll notice the card gracefully just shows white space, right? And I have actions that then apply to this individual item, which are the buttons that we see here. And again, this is repeated 2 more times to cover 2 more tweets that might have happened. Using this connector playground, I can change this information as I see fit, right? So if I really wish to, I can change this to be someone more familiar to myself. And you'll notice right in the preview, it shows that information happening, right? And now I can then use this information to submit a card. Using the buttons on the upper right, I will just click the Send via Webhook, and I can paste that URL that was provided to me during the connector registration. And I click OK. And it's telling me hey, by the way, you need summary or text for the card, right? And so you'll notice I don't have this in here. So I can add this. Right? And I need a closing comma here. Now that that's correct, I can now try again, send via webhook, and I'll paste that in again. And now I get no indication. However, behind the scenes, it will work. Now, depending on the timing, this doesn't happen immediately, but you'll notice inside my view here it says new activity. I'm expecting two different messages. One would be the act that I've connected the incoming webhook connector, and a second one containing the actual content. So here's the first one I was referring to. When I went through that process to register the incoming webhook connector to my group, a message was posted to the conversation informing all users or all members of the group that there is a new connector that has been configured. Paul did it, he connected it to this group, we can then see that information. The second message, is the actual card that I did in my connector playground. You'll notice it has a different name at the top and it has the information shown as we expected to see, matching the message card playground preview. Microsoft Teams also supports the incoming webhook connector. So I'm going to switch over to Teams, and I'm going to actually add a team to that existing group that we created a moment ago. So Microsoft Teams does things a little bit differently. That has channels. So the conversation that I see in the Outlook experience don't show in my Teams experience. And conversely, when I create a connector, I connect to a specific channel. And so by clicking on the general channel, I now see my connectors. And again, I'm presented with the list of connectors registered with the dashboard. You'll see here's incoming webhook again. I will click add, and I get a similar experience. However, first, I need to go through the consent dialog. This is part of the Microsoft Teams. So it's just giving me information saying, by the way, this thing that you're adding has the capability of a connector, and you are giving it permission to do this information. After reading carefully, I'm going to click add, and then I proceed on to the configuration experience. Again, looks very familiar. I can now put in an incoming webhook name here, this being Teams Demo. Again, I can upload the image if I wish, and I click create. And again, I'm provided the URL. Right? So I'm saving that URL. Now, I could go back to the message card playground and submit that card as well, but what I'm going to do instead is use PowerShell to do that. So I'm going to switch over to PowerShell, and the first thing I'm going to do is update this URL with the information that's just provided by Microsoft Teams. Now I need to have a card. So I'm going to go back to my message card playground, and I'm going to choose all of the JSON data that's provided there, and I'm going to then save that. So let's real quick just launch Notepad, and we'll save this information, and then save it. So that's in my connector.json file. So we'll return back to PowerShell, and this is now going to be called connector.json. And then I can send this off. So first thing I want to do is run these one by one. I'm going to set the URL. I'm then going to read the message. I'll real quick verify that that worked as I expected. By looking at the message, I see that just great. And next I'm going to do this invoke REST method operation. The invoke REST method will just make an HTTP call to a specific URL that's specified here. It'll send my content in the body. I'm doing a post, right? And I need to say I'm specifying application/JSON. And when I run this, I expect to get back just the number 1. That is a value from the post that happened, and this is a binary result. 1 is true, 0 is false. So in this particular example, just number 1 is all that's expected to come back. If I return to Microsoft Teams and close this dialog, again, I should see 2 conversational items. One is Paul registered this with the team, and the second one is the incoming card. And you can see here within Microsoft Teams, I only see the first item of the digest with a link to see more. And this is a key part. I specify the data that I want to provide inside the payload, and the rendering of that is handled as appropriate by the application that is hosting the conversation. In Outlook for Web, it showed all three of them all together. In Microsoft Teams, it has chosen to just show the first one with a link to see more, and if I click see more, I can then see the item and toggle that more or less. Now, just to show that these are interchangeable, you'll notice I had this PowerShell sending to Teams. I can also do PowerShell to send that off to groups. I can again go into the connector, and again, if I look at this this already configured webhook, clicking Manage again shows me the URL. I've copied that to the clipboard. Let's put this now as my URL instead of the one that we had before. Right? And then we'll reissue that statement so that it's updated in memory. And again, just change or reissue this statement. And now again, I get number 1. And now I would expect the same message to show up a second time in the group here. And so I'm going to return back. And you'll see, again, at a separate time, I do get my card to come through. We'll cover the details on the developer dashboard, as well as a checklist for items you make sure as you submit your connector. The connector's developer dashboard provides the location where you register your connector with Microsoft for inclusion in the list of connectors that are available to end users. We start out by providing information about your company and the application in which the data will be sent. We can provide a name and a logo. This is visible throughout the various hosting applications so that users can identify our connector. We provide a description of the app, the short description of the app. And this is describing the application that is sending the information. The detailed description covers more about what the specifics of the connector. We include a URL to our company website, and that is, of course, rendered on the pages as well. That allows users to find more information about our company before they agree to have our connector send data to their teams and groups. We move on then to the specifics about the connector. What events will you be supporting? Right? This is just a free form item. You can type in whatever information is relevant to your application so that when users say, oh, I want to do a connector, I'll be getting information about something. What is this something that will be relevant to your app? And we can list as many as are necessary. If you want to enable actionable messages, you would choose the option there as well. Again, actionable messages are covered in detail in a different module. We need a landing page for our users with the inbox and or Teams. And when the users first click the configure button inside the list of connectors, they see our landing page. That provides information about your connector as well as abilities to have the connection, to invoke the connection. The specifics of this are changed based on the hosting application, but you want to make sure you understand you have these options. Furthermore, you have a redirect URL, which is the page to which the data information is set. As we've discussed, when I do the connection, the hosting application will generate information. It'll have the URL as well as the ID of the team or the group or the mailbox. That information is then sent to a specific page, and your redirect URL is that page that receives that information. You can expect the HTTP post to that page, and then you can then store the information in a location that you see fit. Lastly, we need to specify to the developer dashboard what integrations we support or would we like to have. We can choose the user's inbox, a group inbox, or a Microsoft Teams channel. And if you can choose any or all of these as are relevant to your application. And then after accepting the terms and conditions, you can then save that information. The dashboard will then refresh and give you links to the various assets that you need, such as the ID for your connector, which you would need as part of the registration process. But before you do this, and additionally, after registering, the publishing is a separate step. Publishing is what enables your connector to show up in the list. And before you submit to or publish your application, there's some things that you should understand, right? First of all, obviously, you want to test your connector cards in all the various clients. You have mobile, you have web, you have desktop, you have Outlook, you have Microsoft Teams, and you have Yammer. Make sure you go through all these various scenarios and make sure that your card displays as you wish for it to connect. Again, you're not specifying the actual rendering, but again, what if too much information makes the experience a little bit less. Ensure that you're using Markdown for your text and not HTML. Make sure you understand the balance between too much information or generating noise versus adding value to your groups. What events happen in your systems that are relevant for sending connector cards? That is the key thing. Again, it kind of fits in with the value versus noise, but make sure we're only sending information that is relevant and it's appropriate. And if you're going to be sending a summary, a nightly summary or some type of report, again, consider that digest format, that it gives us the key information with a link to see more details. And furthermore, if I'm going to be providing a report, let the users choose the frequency. We may think that a daily report is well, but perhaps some people only want a weekly or they want it twice a day. Again, let them choose those options in your configuration page to configure the timing and the frequency of reports or summaries. If you're including actions in your connectors, they should work all the time or have a very low failure rate. If it's some kind of complex action that has to happen in response, then perhaps the actionable button is not the right choice. Perhaps you should have the open link button, which will then take them to a page and gives an immersive experience in your app to complete the action. Make sure that it is fast and has a low failure rate. And then lastly, make sure your configuration page has implemented the security requirements discussed about either 302 redirect and or the referrer policy so that we don't get a disclosure of the actual webhook URL. As you're getting ready to register, a couple things to keep in mind. Number one, ensure that the name and logo that you choose are not infringing upon a trademark or a copyright. If it's your company, it's your application, and a connector for your application, that's fine. But posting a connector that appears to be coming from some other service that infringes upon some other company's trademark or copyright will not be approved. Provide a high-quality logo. There are documentation about the visual requirements about this, the size and the resolution. It's shown in many different places and many different platforms, and you want to make sure that it looks good in all these places. Something of lower quality will not instill user confidence. Again, you have a description of your application as well as a description of your connector. Have clear user-facing documentation, right? So it's a lot of information. There's various different places where people can run across this. At some point, they're going to want to understand what is this connector and why is it relevant, and it's your responsibility to provide that information to them. And furthermore, as you submit your connector for publishing, there is a team at Microsoft who's going to review this and actually run through the testing to make sure it meets their quality criteria. Right? And that user-facing documentation will be key to passing that process. In addition, when you publish, you have a form that you fill out step-by-step instructions to instruct users how to set up a connector and what information they should expect to see inside their team. And that will include providing any credentials. If you have some back-end service that needs to be authenticated, and you set up a test environment for Microsoft and may give them credentials so that they can give the information and verify that the connector works as you describe. So this module has covered connectors, the connector cards, incoming webhooks, as well as the connector registration. Thank you for your time.